Okay, let's take a quick look at the tool that we're going to build in this tutorial. What I've done is I've put together a little bit of a network here, and this is actually the result of the tutorial. And I've just put a lock flag here because this actually takes a couple minutes to evaluate this entire network. But essentially what we're going to be able to do is start with any kind of shape here, and it doesn't really matter if it's closed or an open shape. And we are going to be able to instance a ton of geometry onto here and actually use the guides of the polygons here to help place this. So you'll see what that turns into here is kind of a nice, crazy, intricately detailed model. And the cool thing is that we do several iterations in here. So we can place one layer of detail, and then we can actually grab a layer here. So you can see that we have a group that we're specifying. So we'll actually grab a piece of the input geometry coming from our Greeble and then Greeble on top of that. So we can do multiple layers of detail here, which gives you some really, really impressive results very, very quickly. And it's ways to get tons of detail in here. And you can see that these shapes here take the exact same shapes of the underlying primitives as well. So you can use that as a guide for how things kind of fit onto the surface. And this is a crazy way of just getting tons of actual geometry detail onto your object. And then also you can see that each one is colored slightly differently as well. That gives it kind of another level of complexity there. I want to kind of show you what's happening here for the actual Greeble objects. So if we go into this DOP here or SOP here, and I'm just going to disable these other guys. So what I've built to instance onto our geometry are really just very basic objects here. You can see some of the shapes. And part of your homework assignment in the last lesson was to start building a couple of these very simple shapes here. And probably what you've done is much more complicated, but we can, and we will in the lesson, just quickly build these out as well in case you haven't done that. Now, just to give you a quick idea of how this tool is going to work, I'm just going to start with a grid here. And let me see how many divisions we've got. Okay, that's pretty good. And then we will simply have an attribute here called a Greeble asset. And so it just works first by doing some kind of subdivision of the grid, giving us kind of random extrusions. And then from there, we have an object list that we can actually populate. So I can I'll just grab one object here. So if I grab that, then we're going to start to put stuff on here. And let's just copy some normals. Make sure that we actually get good display. So you'll be able to keep adding objects as you need. I'll turn that off. And just show you some of the controls you'll have here. So we'll be able to control the extrusions. And this is a little bit of a slow tool, but what it can do is extremely powerful. We can do certain iterations of greebling, which I'm not going to play with. We have scale parameters, so we can adjust the size of the objects that get placed on our surfaces. X, Y, and Z randomness in terms of randomly moving them across our surface. And then we have Z-scale parameters here. So if we have kind of simple geometry, we can actually control these kind of almost building-like extrusions. And then as well, a option here to kind of randomly rotate by 90 degrees how we're copying objects onto our primitives. So that's the basis of the tool. And unlike our previous lesson where we actually worked with instanced objects, this is actually fully deformed copies of geometry on here. So it's not using any shortcuts here. We're actually using real full geo. and what you see is what you're going to get in terms of rendering here. So I look forward to going through this process with you. I think it's super cool, and I think you're going to be able to produce some really great and intricate results with the tool that we're going to build here. So stay tuned.